Good afternoon, everyone.
Hello, hello.
I know it's a little bit of a lull in the afternoon here, so hopefully we can bring a little bit of energy and excitement here and get you interested and pumped about ACE and PCA. We're both very excited to be able to talk about this. Hold on. There we go. So my name is Carl Franklin. I am the Director of Enterprise Architecture in Google Cloud and Professional Services. Don't be afraid. It just means that I like to talk about some tough subjects and sort of try to design things for customers. And this is my partner in crime today, Wayne Davis. I'll let him introduce himself.
Hey, everyone, and good afternoon. And thank you again for attending our next program this week. But my name's Wayne Davis. I'm an engineering leader in the Southeast, and all that means is all of you represent our customer base, and so we thank you for your business, but I get a chance to have my team talk to you on a regular basis.
All right, awesome. So we're going to cover a few topics today around certification. We're going to cover understanding some roles and differences. We're going to talk a little bit about the exam guides. We're going to do some practice here. Don't worry, nobody's getting scored on their answers, but we're going to try and actually walk through some questions. We're going to give you some tips and then give you some what's next and a chance to ask us some questions in case you have any questions or concerns that maybe we can answer.
And I don't think they noticed, Carl, but on that same slide, you were asked to stand up just to make sure we keep your energy high. Did you all see that on the slide? Okay, good, it's not there. So great catch. But again, we just really thank you all for being here this afternoon. This content is not designed to scare you, as Carl mentioned. We really want to make sure that we are in the know with you. So we want to talk you through some best practices, but more importantly, we want you to focus on why Google Cloud is so amazing, and then why these certifications that Carl and I will discuss for the next 30 minutes or so are relevant for all of you. So how's that sound to everyone?
Sounds great.
Okay, good, awesome. All right, so we'll keep it going here. Now, when you think about these certifications, right, Google Cloud certs, they are some of the most sought out in the industry. All of us here in Google, internally, we need to make sure that we are certified. There actually are some Googlers here in the room, and they know the rigor that it takes to be certified. We also know that all of you need to allocate your time. You want to make sure that you are really focused in your efforts to do so, and that's why this content has relevance for you as well. It doesn't matter if you are your very first day in IT or you have some tenure in the field. We want all of you to be certified, and that's why we're having this discussion today. The last thing I love is that if you are thinking about starting a brand new business, maybe you don't want to be involved in technology. Maybe you have individuals on your team, you have a contributor, you have a partner, and they are really excellent at being prepared and doing the tech, then we can push that to you. But as a leader, as an executive, as an owner, a CEO, you still can get certified. So we have a cert for you, and that's what we want to walk you through here in the next slide or two. This one right here is an eye chart, so please disregard all of the visuals here because we're going to get into some more detail, but we have certifications from the far left to the far right. We have a certification lounge we're going to talk about at the end, but I love all of the certs that Google presents to the public today. If you think about the Cloud Digital Leader, right, the very first cert, you work your way over to the right with our Associate Cloud Engineer, and then you look at all of the professional certs on the right. Again, one of them is designed for you, if not all of you. So we want all of you to get all of the certs, or if you can get one of the certs, we still are feeling the same as well. So on the next slide, we're going to dive into a little bit more detail about each one of them. Now, what I love about the Cloud Digital Leader is that you may have started your business, and you're super excited. You need to know just a little bit about Google Cloud. And then you want to pass it off to your colleagues, your friends, and then more importantly, your associates. And then we can dive into some of the details here with regard to our certification platform. The Associate Cloud Engineer gets really sticky because now we're transforming everyone. We're getting from the theoretical, and we are quickly shifting into the practical. And then finally, we go to the far right of the spectrum here with all of the professional certs. A lot of time can be spent on these certs, and you're trying to figure out which one is right for me. If you are looking at your careers, and you're thinking that there's no way I could ever be an architect, well, I'm here to prove you wrong. You can start anywhere along this journey, and again, all of them are relevant to your industries, your companies, and then also maybe your personal tenures. One of the last things I love about, again, all of these certifications is that when you get to the end of that journey, you're sitting in that exam and you get that moment in your email that you pass, you know that all of your hard work is relevant, and now you can put that hard work to work in your jobs and your careers, and then you can also search for net new ones. Next, this is really good because you may be curious about these certifications. And again, right, this is a nice little eye chart, but if you're thinking about building, if you're trying to figure out if I can really deploy this in my day-to-day life, you've never even seen Google Cloud before, everyone. But now you have a chance to start building on our cloud console. That's when the aha moment really happens. And then you start thinking, well, I can do this. And then you can progress. And then as I've seen some of you at our certification lounge, we start talking about how you can move your careers forward. And that's really what the design and the epic pieces of this certification journey is all about. It's your personal journey. So a quick show of hand, right, just to make sure we have the blood flowing here in the room, because I don't want to see any head nods. But how many of you already have your certifications? Awesome. Now, just look around the room really quickly. How many of you do not have a Google Cloud certification? Everybody raise your hand. So everybody just take a look at each other here. These are your friends. These are your colleagues. These are the ones that we're really wanting to motivate to make sure that we all get a small little piece of this pie. How's that sound to everyone? Good. So finally, you can meet all of the technical requirements and also the business requirements. As you start thinking about the professional exams, we really want to see how you think, how you problem solve, and then how you take this all the way to the end of that journey with a passing score at the exam.
All right, awesome. I'm going to walk us through a little bit of the roles that both ACE and PCA has, as Wayne introduced. Just sort of deep diving a little bit more into what are the differences in these two exams, which are some of our core exams, and sort of what's the difference and how you look at those things and try to determine which one maybe makes more sense for you. Maybe both make sense, and we want to make sure that you also understand the differences between the two. So the associate cloud engineer is certainly more of a execution type role. How do you go about deploying a VM? How do you go about assigning security to a role or a group? How do you build up a deployment pipeline? How do you do a data pipeline, et cetera? So the cloud engineer is very much covering a lot of the sort of actions that are required to deploy to the cloud. Now, when you compare that to the professional cloud architect, the cloud architect is much more focused around the words design, which is which products do you use and why are you using them in the combination that you are. So while the ACE is very much sort of a hands-on, the PCA is a little bit more of a design process of trying to go through the steps of figuring out which capabilities you need in order to solve the business requirements that you have on hand. So one of the things we did here was ask Bard, which is our public chat LLM access. You know, hey, Bard, what's the difference here? And while, again, it's a little bit of an eye chart, Bard basically gave the answer that I sort of offered before, which is, you know, the ACE focuses on the technical aspects of the cloud. PCA focuses on the architectural aspects of the cloud. So a little bit interesting there to just see if maybe what we were thinking was also lining up with what the LLM had scraped off of various opportunities. And this chart here, it's a little bit smaller again, but it summarizes some of those details from Bard, which is, you know, the ACE is a technical focus. It has a focus, it has a depth that's wide, so it's covering a lot of the platform. The difficulty is challenging in the sense that it still requires you to sort of understand a lot of different components on the platform, but it is intended for people that are trying to get started in the cloud and trying to start understanding how to deploy infrastructure, how to deploy data solutions. The PCA exam, the professional cloud architect exam, is a little bit more focused on architectural. It's a little bit narrower in focus in the sense that it is focusing more on the role of architecting. So certain aspects like deep dive on security, deep diving on network complexity, deep diving on data engineering, those are all covered by other professional exams. The architect exam itself is more of an overlay of how all of those things come together. The difficulty is classified a little bit harder. This is a little bit more of a professional exam. We expect that you have some experience on the platform, and it is one of the requirements that we say, like, we don't expect people that like take a training class to immediately turn around and go from 0 to hero in, say, a week. It really does require some practical experience on the platform and some use of the platform. So looking at the exam guides in a little bit deeper detail, if you're not familiar with the exam guides are absolutely critical for understanding what we are trying to test on these exams. They are public, they are on the website, they detail out all of the components for all of our different certifications, from digital leader all the way through the professionals. And these provide you the insights on where we're going to ask questions and the things that we're trying to test for. So the big thing I think here that's really important is, while you can see a lot of training classes out there, Google offers them, there are Coursera ones associated with Google, there's some that are independent, there's Pluralsight, there's third-party trainers, et cetera. When you're looking at doing certification, the exam guide should always be that root of knowledge that you're pulling from of these are the things that the certification team is going to test on. The certification team provides this exam guide not only to you, but also to training people, and then the training is developed based off of their perception of what the exam guide is covering. So I really want to emphasize looking at the exam guide and trying to understand what is there and what is not there for each of our exams is pretty important. We do periodically review the exam guides and try to refine them. As we see new roles come into the industry, we may take a certain piece of technology and fork it off into a new certification. We may provide a revised exam guide of removing things from an existing certification just to try and better refine the role. The other big thing that I think is really important for the professional cloud architect in particular is there are case studies on the exams. They are short reads, it's several paragraphs. We provide the case study data ahead of time so that you can read them and try to understand the things that we're going to ask questions around with respect to these case studies. So you will see questions around these published case studies that we maintain that data, and then part of the exam will be targeting those case studies for how do you solve a particular problem in one of these case studies. So let's practice a little, and I'm going to let Wayne jump in first on the ACE. We're going to take a look at a couple of test questions here.
Okay, so I'm extremely nervous right now. I need your help. This is my very first question on the exam. So as you take maybe 10 seconds or so just to read that question, we're going to see if we can figure out what the answer is together. Now, typically when we're looking at all of these exams, these questions, and you're trying to deduce, right, which one may be correct, which one's incorrect, you're watching the timing, there's a lot of moving pieces here. So by show of hands, how many of you think the answer is A for this one here? Oh, let's bring this up here. So we're going to put that up here in a moment. Okay, all right.
Now we'll ask.
Now let's put this up there. So you've read the question, and let's pause for a moment and allow you to take a look at the answers. So if you're considering answer A, it's telling us to assign a basic role to each user. How many of you would go with this as your answer? Answer A. Okay, so the question says that we want to make sure we focus on a couple of things. We want to manage our first company's development portal. We want to use and configure something with identity access management. So, answer A, any takers? Okay, all right, so let's eliminate answer A. All right, fair enough. Let's look at answer B, create groups, assign basic roles to each group, and then assign the users to each group. How are you feeling about answer B? Wow, this is a tough crowd today. All right, let's try this again. What about answer D for Delta? Whoa, okay. All right, any takers for answer C for Charlie? Okay, all right, so we have a problem here, everyone. We're on the exam, and we need to make a quick decision because the clock is ticking. Those seconds are winding down. So by show of hands again, you think the answer is D because it looks really cool. Okay, all right. Thank you, by the way, back there for raising your hand. I appreciate that. Answer D says that we need to assign an IAM predefined role. Why is this answer possibly not the best answer? Okay, so we heard up front because it's a predefined role versus a custom role. Okay, and we need certain permissions. So if we go back and pick answer C, how many of you are going to support me on answer C? Okay, so yes, the answer we want to focus on is when we create these groups, remember that we have a department, we have a group of individuals, we have users. This answer says we take a custom role, we're going to make sure that we look and assign all of those particular users to that particular group. Now, this is important because imagine if all of you were to stand up and we need all of you to come up front and check in and come and shake Carl's hand, shake my hand. That's going to take a while, right? But what if I just ask everybody to put your hand up and give me a virtual high five? Okay, man, that was tough. That makes things a whole lot easier, right? So we collectively just made our relationship a lot faster because of what we did together. So when you look at these answers, right, you're really trying to figure out which ones make sense, which ones are actually focused on doing the right things, and then we're going to come to you in a second. And then we want to make sure that all of these answers look really succinct. So what I typically do is when we're looking at this question, we want to break this down into small bites and chunks. And if you're looking here, it says you want to assign the appropriate roles that are required. So in this case, we're looking at grouping, and we're taking individual users, and then we're marrying them together. So that's why our secret sauce is going to be within that answer. And we're going to come to you in a second here, so bear with me. The second one here that Carl has, this is a really interesting question here. Now, I want to give you a moment just to take a look and read it. It'll take you about 15 seconds or so. Now, pay careful attention to what the question is asking for here. Again, you're describing something, and you want to do something with snapshots. So imagine you have a machine, you have something in time, you want to take a virtual picture of it so you can store it, and then you want to be able to recall that. So you got the question in mind? Okay, all right, let's see what the answers are. Some choices here. So take 15 seconds, again, peruse through the answers, and I need a volunteer. Tell me which one we can immediately eliminate. In 10 seconds. Go for it. B, we'll eliminate. Okay, because snapshots is not part of a main group inside of G-Cloud. Okay, great. So answer B is gone. Another volunteer, which one can we eliminate? Okay, all right, so C. Okay, nobody likes G-Cloud compute snapshots get? Okay, fine, we'll eliminate C because that particular command, remember, we're looking at the listing, describing, and more importantly, we're trying to delete. So, okay, answer C is gone. Fine, I agree with everyone. You have two choices left. Is it answer A or is it answer D? Ooh, did I hear answer A? No. Oh, man, okay. So let's look at answer D. This is a really tough crowd today. Answer D is saying G-Cloud compute list snapshots. Why is that correct or not correct? Give me your thoughts here, and I'll repeat it for the group. Syntax. Okay, so you're supporting it's correct or not correct? Correct. Okay, so we're saying that answer D is correct because of the syntax. Now, a couple things. Snapshots are really important, but it's also important that we have them in a subgroup. And then that subgroup needs to be a part of something else, right? Which is how the command structure is actually put in place. So you'll find that on our platform, syntax means everything, right? How you put those commands in place. But just for today, you know, for the next couple of minutes, you know, at 3:49 p.m. on a Wednesday in California, can we just pick the answer? Can we make it A today? Is that okay? Anybody support me on answer A? Oh, thank you, because I was getting really nervous. So when we look at this G-Cloud Compute Snapshots list, look at the question here again. It says you want to, say that a little bit louder up front. We want to view a description of the available snapshots. So this is why I love these, because when we talk about I need to apply, I need to start, I need to stop, I need to view, I need to change, all these words are very important descriptors in terms of which answer you'll go with. So in regard to this question, answer A is sufficient and it suffices because we're trying to view, and then with regard to this, we want to see a complete list of the options for this particular question. So these are some things. Carl's going to transition us into the professional cloud, and again, we're going to take some questions at the end.
All right, awesome. So this is another little bit longer one. I'll give you a second to take a look at it, but this is a cloud architect question. Again, remember the ACE exam was more on the practical execution side. The PCA side is more on the design side. So you can already see here that we're sort of asking the question in a little bit of a fundamentally different way of what is the best option here? And as you look at this, you start to see some of the components in here of things you might want to think about. You have different tiers, you have network traffic that needs to flow from one component to another. You may not want to allow flow from certain tiers to other tiers. So this should start triggering, even before we think about it, this should start triggering ideas around features on the platform that can maybe support these capabilities. And when we look at the list of answers here, this is where we start to get, you know, sort of a description of what are different potential ways that we can do this. And some of these make a lot of sense in on-prem, and some of them maybe make great sense in on-prem and cloud. But we have to remember, cloud networking is a little bit different than on-prem. So some of these answers might be valid in our on-premises world, which we've been used to for a long time, but in a software-defined network in the cloud, they might not make quite as much sense. So we can look at these answers here and we can see all of these answers have some level of validity, but following Wayne's example here, can someone suggest one of these that might not make sense? A? So yes, A is definitely one that would work in an on-prem world of maybe defining different subnetworks. But in the cloud, we try not to use subnetworks strictly for security. We're trying to use subnetworks for division of workload and things like that, but not necessarily as a security boundary. So it does make sense to go, A would potentially work if we did some other things other than A, but by itself, that's probably not the answer we want in the cloud. Bouncing down the answers here, if we look at B and we say, well, we could set up software-based firewalls on individual VMs. We have that feature on Google Cloud of being able to put in firewall rules, et cetera. That would allow us to do certain capabilities of like saying, hey, the database tier can't talk to or can't receive traffic from the web tier and things like that. But in reality, that's often gonna create some challenges with management, because what happens if these tiers are scaled with something like a managed instance group? Now we have challenges of how do we keep up with the firewall rules and make them work, which gets us a little bit more into the C and the D answers, which is using tags to help us identify which VMs have which firewall rules applied to them. So tag C talks about routing, tag D, item D talks about tagging for firewall rules. So one of them is trying to do route-based, the other one is trying to do firewall-based. In theory, both of these are pretty reasonable, but you generally don't want to be trying to mess with the routing unless you have very particular reasons for why you want to route traffic certain ways. Again, a security reason isn't always the best reason to do this in Google Cloud, so D winds up becoming a lot easier answer to use network tags to tag certain firewall rules and then have VMs inherit those rules based on which tags those VMs have. So when I have a managed instance group for my different tiers, I will tell that managed instance group to associate a tag with the different firewall rules that are required for it. All right, Last question, promise. It is a discussion about certification, so we wanted to get into a little bit of this and just sort of show you the difference. Here's another question, trying to look at something like managing a whole bunch of data coming in from a lot of different locations and thinking about the different products and capabilities that might allow this to happen. So I will give you a second to sort of absorb the scenario. There's some numbers in here which might give you some thoughts about like what might work, what might not work. Things like having 1,000 meeting rooms, probably something you don't want to be doing a lot of manual steps for 1,000 times. So you want to try and figure out a way that you would be able to automate that such that you're not dealing with the size of some of these numbers. And when we look at the solutions here, we have a couple of different types of solutions. We have a solution that sort of talks about trying to have data dropped to compute engine, but it has an element in it talking about persistent connections. And one of the things we certainly know in cloud is relying on something to always be there is probably not the best answer for a reliable solution because you have network packet loss, you have hiccups, et cetera. So solution A doesn't sound great because it's sort of requiring a setup to be sort of semi-permanently configured for having the data flow. Answer C doesn't sound too bad. Basically having the devices go out and sort of periodically submit data to Cloud SQL. Part of the challenge here is then managing the individual devices and sort of bundling up that data on a per device basis. So we're asking the device to sort of do some work with its own windowing. Getting it into Cloud SQL, not a terrible thing. But as a PCA person, as we've been practicing, one of the things we learn about Cloud SQL is there's a lot of security concerns and a lot of security configuration with respect to trying to get authenticated connections to Cloud SQL. So you're going to have some security challenges with B of trying to make sure that you have all of these devices around the world properly authenticated and that someone isn't maybe trying to hook up a 1001 device that's sort of spamming into your system fake data. I'm going to jump C for the moment because I'm going to give you part of the cue here is that C tends to be a good answer for this one. And when I look at D, we again see that persistent connection element. The big difference here is instead of using compute, which is a hard VM stuck on a particular machine in a particular data center, we've addressed it with App Engine, where App Engine is this more flexible, stateless architecture that does serverless compute. So we've solved part of the problem in D that A had, but we still have this persistent connection element, which again can be fairly unreliable. So then that leads us back to question C, which is leveraging a pub sub that the pub sub can receive the data and it can have this massive flood of data coming inbound, but it doesn't require that all get written to permanent storage immediately because it's using a queuing mechanism. We can have whatever the velocity of data is come into pub sub and we will process it as we need to. So we've built in a queuing system. We've sort of dealt with a little bit of the reliability elements here. And we're looking now at a design solution that maybe has higher resiliency than the other three choices. All right, exam tips. So I'm going to start us out here, and we're going to jump over to Wayne for a little bit of this. So we talked about some of these items here and hopefully addressing some of the questions here. One of the things you very much want to pay attention to is keeping pace. You want to make sure you read the question in its entirety. You heard Wayne very much focus on certain words in the question will be sort of triggers for certain ways of thinking. At the same time, failing to read the question very precisely will lead you to miss certain elements, like maybe the question was asking for the most cost-effective or the easiest to scale solution. Missing those words can make one of those other answers that winds up being wrong feel like it's more right because you missed one of the constraints in the solution, and now it's very difficult to do an either-or between the two. Make sure you watch your time. In my practice, the exam time is generally not an issue, but it depends on how fast you read, how fast you process. We are trying to give a fair amount of time for everyone, but we also don't want to make these tests literally like all afternoon or all morning. So one of the things you want to watch is if you're spending a lot of time thinking and trying to muddle through things, there is a capability within the exam experience to sort of flag the question to come back through next time for a review. So I would often recommend if you're spending more than 2, 3, 4 minutes on a question, just tag it for later consideration, get through the rest of the exam, and then when you have available time at the end, rather than risking the whole exam on that one blocked question and having unanswered questions, you're now just down to whatever you felt like you wanted to spend more time on. And then ideally you still have enough time, but you haven't ruined your chance at all the rest of the questions.
Can we have a quick moment with everyone? Have you taken an exam online before? Okay, good. And how many of you prefer to take an exam in person? So if you do a quick shift, right, this can be daunting for you, right? It can be a task that is just like throwing you off mentally. You could be scared, you could be nervous because you're not used to the other format, so it could mess you up. But in number 2 and 3, this is really good practices for you to follow. A good answer does not mean it's the best answer. So you could see some similarities in the questions and then also the answers, and then it could basically jolt your mind to think that it could have been applicable to another one, which is why if you think about what Carl was saying, marking answers and moving on is a really good practice. But what I really love to do, I take a look at the exam guide. I make sure that I comb through all the little fine details, and then I find the little hot links that I need in my best practice for taking exams so that I can be prepared for the exam. If you think about the answers, right, like how many of you prefer the morning time over the nighttime? Okay, now how many of you prefer the nighttime over the morning time? Now, I just asked the same question, but just in reverse, right? So at the end of the day, it's percepting and how we think about the exam, how we think about the question, and then how we formulate answers. But as you get your really good muscle memory in place, right, find a way that works best for you to study. So again, another quick show of hands. How many of you study best early in the morning? And then how many of you study best when there's chaos? Yeah, so I appreciate all of you as well. But the idea is to find your groove, what makes you get really sticky with the material, and then allow it to be absorbed into your mind so that you can pass that exam. The exam guide is not meant to trick any of you, because Carl and I, we take the same exams you do. But we also want to make sure that when you're going through your muscle memory and getting the retention and thinking about how stuff works, you want to find all of those things that really make the answer relevant to the question. So that's why I started out and said that answer could be a good answer, but according to the question, certain words in there really will draw out the best answer. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay, excellent. So thank you so much. We'll continue.
All right, so a little bit about both exams, sort of getting into some of the details here. The length of the exams are both 2 hours long. They are multiple choice and multiple select questions. So multiple choice is choose one of. Multiple select is choose two or more. The question itself will tell you often how many to pick. That's another really good tip of, as you're looking at a multiple select, double check that you see it says choose 2. If you pick 3, you've already missed the question. So it's a really simple thing that I've screwed up several times of just trying to understand all of the data in the question that it's giving me that's sort of cueing me to where I should be looking and what I should be thinking about. Neither one of them have any prerequisite requirements. The recommended experience is for the ACE exam to have 6 months of experience on Google Cloud, and the PCA is quote unquote 3+ years. Both of these are really driven around industry experience. So we want you to have experience using virtualization technology, using storage systems that are block-based, file-based, object-based. We want you to have experience doing networking configuration through software because our network is an SDN. But very much those guide items are there to make sure that you sort of have a feeling that these are not intended to necessarily be like the first thing you do out of college. They are intended to sort of validate skills that you've been building through your professional career and that you're set up for success to be able to advance your career. And then, of course, building your learning journey. There's several different things that Google provides to help you out. We have different courses. There are third parties out there that also provide courses. We love that there's a larger community out here of things that you can get access to. There is on-demand learning. I am a really big fan of Google Cloud Skills Boost. Google Cloud Skills Boost is very much activity-driven of performing actions. So it really aligns super well to the ACE exam of doing things. If you haven't done a Google Cloud Skills Boost class online, I highly recommend you trying it because things like learning how to deploy Kubernetes or learning how to set up BigQuery and maybe use something like BigQuery ML, it's great for building specific skill sets because it's guiding you in how to perform those actions in the console. And that gets to really that hands-on lab element, the third one here, which is the power of that system is getting your hands on the product. It doesn't require credits for using Google Cloud Skills Boost in the sense that you're getting consumption against Google Cloud. The class itself creates a test environment with a custom login, and you get a period of time to use that environment without having to worry about personally running up a bill or having your corporate account charged, and then you may forget to undeploy something, and all of a sudden you're like, well, why did I get a bill for $300? Oh, it's that test Kubernetes cluster that I spun up and forgot to spin down. Google Cloud Skills Boost handles that beautifully by giving you an environment for a period of time and then automatically destructing that environment. On top of the hands-on labs are skill badges. These are journeys that you can do with Google through the Skills Boost website or the Skills Boost platform. It gives you a journey of sort of establishing a certain set of skills like performing VM migrations or learning how to do data pipelines. And then, of course, that last element here is the process and the program of going through certification. So one of the things you very much want to focus on is sort of establishing with yourself, making yourself get a commitment to how can you get through the certification. There are some people that are very much challenged with the idea of, well, I'll take it when it's convenient. And then, you look at it 2 years later and it's never been convenient. Some of the stuff that I think is very helpful for us to get through certification exams is establishing when you want to accomplish it, establishing how much time, how many weeks of preparation work you want to give yourself, how many hours in a given week do you want to make yourself commit to being engaged in this task, and then sort of what is the total investment that you're looking at there for trying to prepare. This will often manifest the task at hand of trying to get through the certification. It'll give you more commitment because you've effectively sort of built a mini project plan of how you're going to get from where you are to where you're going to get having that certification be successful. So along the same lines as the last slide here, it's also very important to be practical and not try to overwhelm yourself by going, you know what, I'm going to cover everything in the next 2 weeks. Like looking at the exam guide gives you a logical breakdown on a lot of different sections of the exam. This can be used to maybe give you a week by week or a few days by few days plan of what do I want to focus on and where do I want to spend my time. That can help determine, are there courses, are there skills boost journeys that you can go on that will help you be successful? Is there documentation that makes sense to take a look at? I can tell you from Wayne and I's perspective, We have several exams that we've completed, but we still have to go through recertification every couple years. So one of the things we do is look at the exam guide and try to understand what's new in the exam guide, and then what documentation has gotten added to the formal docs about those new things. So it becomes a little bit of a delta process in recertification of going, I've got the stuff that I passed last time, now what's new that I want to make sure that I'm not getting blindsided by? And then, of course, like we just reviewed here, it winds up being super helpful. Google has published sample questions for both exams, and it becomes really helpful and calming to look through some of those questions, which are previously retired questions for various reasons. So they're not used on live tests. You're not going to get a free answer in the middle of it. It would be nice if we did, but we don't. But it gives you a feel for what can you expect when you go into the certification process itself and you're sitting there staring at the exam. Like, what kinds of questions can I get? How are they structured? That can happen through the sample questions to give you a better feel for what that experience can be, so you don't lock up and then you look up and you've got like 10 minutes left and 20 questions left, which nobody wants to have happen. So wrapping this up a little bit, we've got a little bit of time left and we're happy to answer some questions. We have a mic here in the center if you'd like to ask Wayne or I any questions about the presentation or anything else on certification. We're happy to field some questions. And if anyone's lining up, just want to make sure that I throw this up on the slide for, making sure that you get a chance to take a look at other sessions, making sure that you look at some of the benefits of your conference pass. And then the very last thing is obviously taking a look at the survey that you have and trying to give us feedback so Wayne and I can get better at presenting and making sure that we're providing useful information for all of you. So.
And Carl, could I add one thing to this?
Yeah, go for it.
So I've been counting in the room, at least 50 of you that have been down to the lower level in the innovation area, and you've already done the little checkbox. This is a super important slide for you. You've come to the event, you've been here at Google Next, you deserve a voucher, and you deserve Skills Boost credits, and we want to make sure we provide that for you, as Carl stated. So please find your way down there and then get yourself a developer profile if you don't already have one, so that you can jumpstart your certification journey if you haven't already started.